Welcome to the third lecture of Buddhism for Beginners by Buddhaland, a straightforward explanation of Buddhism. Let's start. The core of Buddhism and the first turning wheel of Dharma. Four Noble Truths. The Buddha taught, and Buddhists to the present day believe, that dissatisfaction and suffering, illness, aging, and death are integral parts of life for any sentient being. Still, suffering is created by our attachment and clinging. The core of Buddhism is the Four Noble Truths. The first Noble Truth, the truth of suffering. The second Noble Truth, the truth of the origin of suffering. The third Noble Truth, the truth of the cessation of suffering. The fourth Noble Truth, the truth of the path to the cessation of suffering. It is essential to understand that we can end it just as we create our suffering, through our efforts. The first Noble Truth, the truth of suffering. After the Buddha's experiences as a prince and as a wandering monk, the Buddha learned that all people have one thing in common. If they think about their own life or look at the world around them, they will see that the life is full of suffering. Suffering, he said, may be mental or physical. The Buddha's most important teachings were focused on the way to end the suffering. His discovery of the solution began with the recognition that life is suffering. This is the first of the Four Noble Truths. Suffering is a fact of life. There are four unavoidable physical sufferings: birth, old age, sickness, and death. Physical suffering takes many forms. As we get older, all of us find that life can become more difficult for all kinds of reasons. Our eyes may not see as well, our ears may not hear as well, our teeth may not be as healthy, making it harder for us to eat. The pain of disease, which strikes young and old alike, is a reality for us all from time to time, and the pain of death brings much grief and suffering. Even the moment of birth gives pain both to the mother and the child. There are also three forms of mental suffering: separation from people we love, contact with people we dislike, and frustration of desires. People feel sad, lonely, or depressed. They suffer when they lose a loved one through separation or death. They feel irritated or uncomfortable when they are in the company of people they dislike. People also suffer when they are unable to satisfy their limited needs and wants. Happiness is real and comes in many ways, but happiness does not last forever and does not stop suffering. Buddhists learn that many people try to escape from the suffering in life by distracting themselves with temporary pleasures. Buddhists believe that the way to end suffering is first to accept that suffering is a part of life. The second Noble Truth, the truth of the origin of suffering. After the Buddha learned that suffering is a part of life, he realized he could not find a way to end suffering without finding its causes. This is just like a doctor knows about what's wrong with the patient by listing their symptoms, finding out what makes them worse, and studying out cases before prescribing a cure. By watching people, Buddha found out that the causes of suffering are craving, desire, and ignorance. The way to end suffering in life is to understand what causes it. What are the things we crave for? The food we love to eat, entertainment, new items, popularity, money, beauty, and so many more things and experiences depend on who we are and where we are. Craving can be explained as the strong desire that people have for pleasing their senses and experiences life itself. People everywhere crave their favorite tastes, but we all know that not even the best sweets in our favorite meal last forever. None of the pleasures we crave forever give us lasting happiness or satisfaction. Even if these pleasures are repeated, the trouble is that we can still feel unhappy again and again. Another cause of suffering is ignorance. What is ignorance? Buddhists see ignorance as the inability to see the truth about things. Buddhists believe that there are many truths about the world that people are ignorant of because of the limits of their understanding. Buddhism teaches that as long as people remain ignorant of things about the world, they will suffer from all kinds of misunderstandings and delusions. But when people develop their minds and acquire wisdom through study, careful thoughts, and meditation, they will see the truth. They will understand the Buddha's teaching about suffering and impermanence of life, and the Four Noble Truths will be apparent to them. The Buddha said that overcoming craving and ignorance leads to true happiness and enlightenment. The third noble truth, the truth of the cessation of suffering. There is an end to suffering. It can happen to anybody, anywhere, even here and now. And the key to end all the suffering is to remove all desires, ill will, and ignorance. Every step of the way to removing the causes of unhappiness brings more joy. On the path to the end of suffering, which is a path that Buddhists may spend their whole lifetime practicing, there are levels of happiness and freedom from craving and ignorance that can be achieved. The key to ending suffering is to remove all desires, ill will, and ignorance. Without these causes of suffering, we can experience absolute happiness, perfect wisdom, and enlightenment. The fourth noble truth, the truth of the path to the cessation of suffering. In the beginning, Prince Siddhartha lived in luxury and wealth in his father's palace. After he renounced his privileged life and became a wandering monk, he experienced the hardship and difficulty of life with nothing. He spent years torturing his mind with hard thoughts and solitude, starved his body, enjoyed no comforts, and suffered all the life experience without belongings. Not long before he achieved his insight and attained enlightenment, he realized that the proper way to happiness was to avoid these extremes and follow a moderate life path. He called this way of living the middle path. True Buddhists do not seek endless pleasures, and they do not torment themselves with pain. The Four Noble Truths is that the middle path leads to the end of the suffering. The middle path is the Buddha's treatment for the problem of suffering in all of our lives. In the time he spent learning about suffering's cause and nature, he also learned about its cure and set out to teach it.